So here we are, Mandalorian season 3, episode 3, chapter 19, I think it's called. So, interesting episode. We've got slightly different today. We're conversing back and forth, so this should be good to see someone else's opinion, not just mine, because I'm obviously right on all things, but sometimes it is good to get a second opinion. So very, very quickly, I was what I would say whelmed by this episode. I would say that the crowd went mild. There's another way to put it. It was it seemed very bizarre that, like, I don't know if you felt the same, but it started off very fast paced. There was a very fast action scene, some dog fighting, which I thought, this is cool, really cool. Some weird decisions went on in there, and we'll go into a bit more of an episode breakdown after, but for general thoughts, the pacing was a bit all over the place. You went straight away from the end of the last episode into a full-on chase sequence, cool visuals, then it cuts to black, and the pacing just stops completely. It goes super slow while we get into what I noted was essentially just Operation Paperclip, but in space. So if you're unfamiliar with Operation Paperclip, go and Google it. But in essence, it's the end of World War II. Nazis move over to America, and everyone kind of forgets what they've done. And this is essentially what's happened here. So we get a very long sequence. It seemed like a very long episode. I think that was mainly because it was so slow. But then we get the conclusion of that story. I don't know if that's the conclusion of that story or if this is going to come back and rear its head at some point. But we get a conclusion of a B story. Jump back into Mando for the end with a reasonably satisfying conclusion of Mando's story. I felt like there was an episode 4 in the middle of this. They crowned episode 4 into the middle of episode 3. Mm-hmm. I don't know, what were your thoughts? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I have to echo what you say about the pacing. I think halfway into the episode, I was a bit like, wow, like, check my watch, kind of, how long is this going on for? Now, I was watching it with my wife, who's been mildly interested in Star Wars, but I noticed halfway through she was kind of like looking about going, but we just had a dogfight scene, and now we're just in a city. In her, her perspective of it was like, what is going on? I don't understand why it's changed. The episode, I think I know what they were trying to do. However, I didn't like the bits bolted on at the start and the end. Because I think it took me a real long time to get into the middle story. And I say the middle story, I mean, it was, 3/4 of the episode, pretty much. It took me really a long time to get into it, because every moment I was like, we're going to switch back to another plot or story arc. And it never happened. And I was like, what is going on? I don't get it.
I totally wasn't sure.
I don't know.
I totally just wasn't sure, like, what was the intention of the characters? Like, are they going to come back? It seems at the end of it is totally, it could be the end of their story, or she could come back in at the end. But I felt like the whole time I was looking at it, what's the point of this? Why am I watching this? What's this going to do to drive the main story forward? And at the end of it, I'm still confused as to, has it driven the main story forward at all? Or,
well, the main thing that I think I need to let people know is I watched episode 3 when it basically in the evening of the day it came out in the UK, and my wife and I, we only caught up with Mandalorian season 3 yesterday, so we've watched the episodes pretty much back to back. The main thing that I was warned about was the fact that when Mandalorian season 3 starts, the Book of Boba Fett was where a lot of the story was. So, hands up, I've not watched the Book of Boba Fett. I basically watched a synopsis of the story on YouTube to get up to date.
That's all you need.
So, after watching that, and then getting into Mandalorian Season 3, and then watching tonight's episode, it felt very disjointed, the whole Star Wars universe, what Disney are doing with it.
Yeah.
Like,
Here's a question. Did you know who these people were? Did you remember them?
the only reason I remembered who they were was because we didn't skip the recap at the start of the episode 3.
I don't know who's in charge of these recaps, because it was like 2 very quick scenes which basically showed you their faces, and if they weren't wearing their Imperial uniforms, I would have forgotten I don't actually know if I remember who the woman was. I remember the Doctor, because he played quite an important bit of Season 1, but I don't really remember the woman at all, so I didn't really know if I was supposed to hate her or not. I suppose I am, because she was part of the Empire and worked with Moff Gideon, but it was just very unclear. As they have to remember that some of these episodes came out 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, and they're just not doing a very good job of keeping people up to date, I don't think. Unless you're a super hardcore fan and can constantly go back to refresh yourself. They're expecting a lot from the audience to like remember. So
I think the main thing that got me was I felt the characters are now being shoehorned into being bigger than they actually were supposed to be. I don't know if you got those vibes, but I felt basically the scientist pushing and the communications officer, I've completely forgotten her name. I
had to write it down when she said it, because I thought I'm definitely going to remember this. She said it's Elia Kane, I think.
So yes, something like that. But this is the kind of issue I have with this story. This particular episode was the fact that I didn't really care about them in the last, when I last saw them, because I wasn't given any motivation to believe that they were important characters. And I feel what they've done with this episode is they've gone, we need a plot line. And my theory about this is obviously the communications officer, the lady, there's some bigger story there that they're going along with. To me, it just didn't feel organic. I feel that wasn't their original intention, and this episode has been shoehorned in to create this story arc. I don't know what you think.
No, exactly. I know exactly what you mean. It feels like this was a completely separate, standalone story. Yeah, I have a weird suspicion that we're just never going to see these people again. Well, certainly one of them. Like, yeah, we'll go into like proper spoilers when we do the episode breakdown. But I mean, certainly one of them you're never going to see again. But I didn't feel like. It felt almost like they were trying to do a pilot for another series. Yeah. Which is totally completely devoid of the Mandalorian. I did think to myself at some point, like, I'm definitely watching another show here. Like, even tonally, it felt different. I didn't understand what the tone they were going for was either, because it felt like some points that there was a out and out buddy comedy. Like there's bits on when they're on the train, which just felt like they had like the jaunty buddy comedy music going on, and then it instantly shifts to like sort of a thriller mystery, spy sort of thing. It felt tonally all over the place. Like they had no idea what they really wanted to do with the characters, but they had them, so they thought, well, we may as well use them.
And that's the thing. Just to jump in, what you've just said. And then for me, I completely agree with everything you said, but on top of that, in the back of your mind, you know that there's something sus. And the problem was, and I don't know if this has been set by the randomness of this Star Wars kind of story where they're putting in one show and then it's in another show and all this kind of thing. But I'm watching it going, is this really important? I know something suspicious is happening. Or because it was all over the place, as you said, I was thinking, am I right to think this is suspicious? Like, is this what I should be thinking? And that kind of cut into my enjoyment of the episode, if I'm honest, because I'm constantly like this small thing, like, you know, the yellow travel biscuits that I think they called them. And, you know, I was like, oh, I must remember that. Or and I'm like, oh, was it just a way of her introducing herself, like, oh, you can trust me, I got you these. But like, was that a big deal and all this kind of thing? Which ultimately it kind of was. But you know, I didn't know I didn't know where to look. Is what I think I'm trying to say. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally know what you mean. I didn't, because of the way the show operates. I'm never sure what's meant to be important and what's just throwaway line nonsense.
Yeah.
So having seen all 3 episodes of this season in relatively quick succession, where would you rate this compared to the other 2?
Honestly, I'm disappointed so far.
I would say this is the weakest one so far.
Yeah.
And annoyingly, it was the longest one so far.
Yeah.
I think that added to it being one of the weakest. It was too long.
Yeah. I think overall as well. I mean, you know, as I mentioned earlier, you know, I'm watching this with my wife, and you know, my wife, the first 2 seasons, like, she enjoyed it so much that when the 3rd season was coming out, she was like, "Oh yeah, we need to get on that." And you know, if you've got a kid, as you know yourself, you know, when you have limited time to watch television,
yes.
You know, if something like this comes up that's important enough, your wife says, "I really want to watch this," then you know the past 2 seasons have done something good. And I think what's disappointed her is the fact that she was really kind of getting into the whole kind of space cowboy kind of aesthetic. You know, even little episodes in the earlier seasons where, you know, like they're going into the town and they kind of have like a kind of Western standoff when they meet. What's the name of the robot?
I nobody cares because he's not important anymore.
Yeah, but you know, when we met them, you know, there was a standoff and that kind of thing, and the story had these little subplots, but you know, overall the aesthetic of the show stayed the same. But so far, you know, my wife's like, "Oh, right, so we're going to have to watch another TV show. Oh, that's going to be a bit annoying." I was like, "Oh, well, I quickly fixed that. We watched Synopsis." Now, you know, she was watching it, and she actually made a comment, because the main part of the story is completely detracted from major things, like somebody's house gets blown up.
So,
you know.
Yeah, so let's just go into a bit of a breakdown. Yeah, there's a couple of points that I noted, which I thought were just a bit crazy. Yeah. So we break down the episode a little bit, and jump in if you agree, disagree, or noticed anything else. But we start off basically back right at the end of episode 2, and Jin has just essentially drowned, and she's pulled him up and then just sat back and left him because she can't take his helmet off to give him mouth to mouth. So he's dead? And if he's not dead, what is he, why is he unconscious? And it turns out he did just fall in. He fell in and sank. He wasn't pulled down by the creature or whatever it was there, because he was like, "I didn't see anything, there's nothing there." So he literally just fell into a pool and sank to the bottom. Yet again showing that he is incompetent.
Exactly. But then Bo-Katan's like, she goes, "Did you see anything down there?" And he's like, "No."
Is it no?
You know, I was too busy drowning. And she was like, "All right then." So that first bit, I'm like, all right, mental note time. I must make a note of this. There is something suspicious going on. And then I've only just remembered that plot point now that we're talking about it.
So I think he was being genuine. I think he didn't actually see anything. He's painted as a bit of a clown.
Yeah.
But then my next point is he painted as a clown, and then in the next point they go into a dogfight with these Imperial ships, which come out of nowhere. We still don't. The mystery of it, where they came from, is something that we'll explore later on, I imagine. But his first reaction is to jump out.
Yeah.
And like, I'll get into my plane and fight back, even though the only defense she has on her ship is him with his gun. So he could have stayed on the ship and shot with that gun, but no, he thinks the best thing to do is for me to jump out in the middle of a dogfight and jetpack onto a landing pad and then get into my ship and then go and fight the Imperial fighters. Like,
which on its own, I might add, is seriously badass. Okay?
It looked amazing.
But then when you remember the haphazard nature that he's currently had in this season, you're kind of like, what? For a minute he fell in an underground lake, like what, half an hour ago? do you know what I mean? And he's like, all of a sudden he's like jumping out of a plane, using his jetpack, getting into another plane, and dogfighting. And I was a bit like, well, hang on a minute, what are you trying to make me think about?
Exactly. I don't know what I'm supposed to think.
What do you want me to think?
Yeah, it's all over the place. They have no idea. They seem to have no idea who the character is, or what the character is capable of. Because you're right. There's just the previous episode. He was captured twice, or he was captured once and then almost drowned by a sheer incompetence. Like when he fell into the pool, could he not have did he fall unconscious? Could he not have used his jetpack to get out of the pool? Like, but then he goes and does something crazy like that. With his jetpack, lands right next to his ship, gets in his ship, shoots them all down, and then he does some crazy stuff. It was just one of these things where it's like, I know it's going to look cool. Let's dogfight. Let's do that. And it's like, yeah, it does look cool, but it's
just so confusing because this isn't the first season of this show. This isn't his third episode where we're still making up conclusions and assumptions about him as a character. We've had 2 seasons of him being a badass. This hasn't come out. I don't know why this has come out of nowhere. That he's a bumbling space cowboy now. It's the only way I can describe him compared to the other seasons where he was a badass space cowboy, righting the wrongs while looking after a small child.
Yeah, it just seems like the show is trying to paint other people as like really good, but they're doing it in a way like they make the Mandalorian, like make Jin look really bad until it comes to a point where they think, we could do something cool looking here, so let's just throw that in.
And I think because you're going to do the episode, the points of the episode, I think based on what you've said about painting other characters, I think the next bit that happens is another classic example of them trying to shoehorn painting other characters.
Yeah, so the next thing I had was which was weird. Like Bo-Katan's house, or like her fort, or whatever you want to call it, has absolutely zero defenses in it.
Yes.
Like nothing. There is nothing there. I mean, is it just her?
Well, this is it. I was trying to work out what value her house had, because in the previous episode, she's basically like, "Nah, everybody's gone." I don't have the I can't remember the exact name of the weapon, but I don't have that.
The dark saber.
Yeah, that was it. Dark saber. So they're like, no, not interested in me anymore. And then all of a sudden, her house is blown up and completely destroyed, and I'm like, and that accomplished what?
So someone is out to get what, her or the Mandalorian, like Jin. We don't know necessarily who's out to get them, but someone's sent an entire fleet to kill the two of them and blow up her fort, which just seems like out of nowhere. I'm hoping that this was not just some throwaway bit to get Bo-Katan and the Mandalorian to join up. Like, I'm hoping this is going to be something. But now, I did notice, like, what is the point of the season now? Because he's been redeemed. So isn't that not the story over?
Well, I mean, the only thing I think that I could take from the end of the episode, I don't need to jump all the way to the end, but they were basically like, all right, okay, have you taken your helmet off? And both of them are like, no to the armourer. They go, no, it's all fine. So Din and Bo-Katan are both like, accepted back, and then they're all like, "Hey, yeah, cool, we're cool with you now," and I'm sitting there going, "Okay, but the armor is going to tell us there's a problem, or something's going to happen. Like, for instance, after Bo-Katan's house got blown up, were they going to follow them to the new? They're all in exile. After the Mandalore has been bombed after the purge, but no, they didn't get attacked. They're all just standing around, and I was like, oh." And then the credits came out. I was like, "Oh, that was literally it." That there wasn't some kind of sudden little plot twist to go, that's what's going to happen next week.
Yeah, I thought to myself, it's like, is Bo-Katan going to say something, or is she going to do something to be like, "Well, I'm the leader now," or "Jin, I challenge you to a fight so I can win the Darksaber," or I mean, that's presumably coming. But I also didn't know. I don't understand, what is living water, and how do you prove that it is? Is it just filled with bioluminescent things that when she pours it into normal water, it lights up? It seems like a very easy thing to fake. The fact that he's bathed in the water.
I get that they've gone back to their home planet that they never thought they were going to get back to, and it was assumed that the purge had destroyed everything. In fact, I think they refer to it as things have been poisoned a few times. Hence, they've got to get the glorified garbage bin to go out and fail to even do the solitary task it's been purchased for. But are they going to go back there? They didn't even. The armourer didn't even go, "Hey, you know what? Let's all saddle up and go back to our home planet and see if we can live there."
You would think, "Oh, this is great. We've got proof that we can go back and live on Mandalore now." But maybe that'll be something to explore. So then we get it basically cuts to black after that first dogfight, and we go to the main thrust of the episode, which is, as I say, like Operation Paperclip, where ex-Empire and Imperial troops and captains are in this amnesty program. So I thought that was actually quite interesting. I did actually think the concept of that was fairly interesting, because I did actually think to myself, I've thought about this for years. What happened to like all the people who were just in the Empire and like were just like clone troopers or stormtroopers or whatever? Like, I know eventually they all eventually go to join the First Order, or most of them probably do. But for the intermediate point, what do they do? Apparently they go to these amnesty places, which and rehabilitation centres.
I was going to say, you do your rehabilitation, and then you seem to get put back into society in the amnesty accommodation, was it? Or amnesty housing?
The amnesty housing. So I thought that was, and I think I'd already given designations like L-52 at that point, or is that their Empire designations? I didn't think that the Doctor had one. He was just Doctor.
Was he L-53? I think he was L-53. And I don't know. See, this is where, for instance, a couple of lines, or even just like, I don't know, him getting processed. Say, for instance, he's leaving the rehabilitation centre, and a couple of lines of, like, for instance, I mean, I assume that they use code names or numbers or designations like that, so they don't know who's who. So obviously, I don't know, for security or something, to stop them finding out, they know each other and they were working on the same ship back when they're in the Empire and all that. But I felt like a couple of extra lines, or like a scene or two before him just being plonked in front of a massive crowd doing a talk.
Well, yeah, that's the thing I didn't understand. Who was this? The Doctor is obviously very, clearly important to the Empire, and he was important enough that he's giving a talk to hundreds of thousands of people. But then his job is to basically catalogue bits of old crap. So, in one hand, he's incredibly important, and the New Republic is taking his word, very seriously. And then in the next instance, they're just chucking him down in the basement to do a bunch of donkey work. It's like, well, what is he? Either he's like really important to you, or he's not. And you're not going to let him do his research onto cloning and whatever. And I was like, okay, that's strictly prohibited by the New Republic. But why didn't you have him talking, like a celebrity? This seems very odd.
Well, the only thing I could think off the back of it is it was one of those kind of like, it was one of those kind of showing off government projects with like, look how great we are, look at the amazing things we've done. We've made like one of the best scientists flip over to us. But I think what got me was the fact that when he was introduced, he's doing a big talk. And then it was just like he's in a taxi. There's a scene where he's basically in the equivalent of a taxi going home, and they're just talking random shite, basically, for lack of a better phrase. Like there's a whole scene where he's just going home and he's like, oh, you can look at this, you can look at that, go look at all these nice places in Coruscant, and he's like, okay, cool, and then he hops out, and I was like, that was a pretty pointless scene. Or did I miss something there? That I was meaning to ask you. I just thought it was such a random scene.
No, as I was trying to say, I noted, I've made like 4 notes on that entire sequence, and the sequence is probably about 35 minutes long. Like the maybe even more, maybe it's 40 minutes long. The bit with the Imperial officers in Bar, but I've made like 4 notes because essentially nothing happens. Like they chat to a bunch of other people who have been rehabilitated. He goes to work a couple of times, asks some stupid questions. And then it all boils down to the end, where I notice that. So I don't understand what the woman's job is. Is her job to go in to the entrapment, like the centers, the rehabilitation centers, and like entrap people? That doesn't seem very New Republic-y. Where she goes in and sets honey traps for people, like because she's the one who's like forcing them to go and do this.
Yeah. My first thought was right. We're at the end of that whole like sequence, or the whole bit of that subplot. At the end of it, like, oh, for every failure, it's good to see that you're a success. I'm paraphrasing here, and then I'm kind of like, but if she wasn't there, he wouldn't have done any of this. It reminded me of the time when, and spoilers for people that haven't seen the Lord of the Rings TV show, for that, it's one of those plots as well where it's had to rely on such stupid random events. Like, if the main... This is what I didn't understand with it, with her being suspicious all the way through it, or kind of friendly but over friendly, so you think, oh, something sus going in here, and you're going all the way through it, you're kind of thinking, well, okay, so potentially she's going to... I mean, my first thought was she's still with the baddies, with the Empire, and she's basically trying to get him back into doing what he's good at, the cloning. And she was basically in there as like a kind of double agent trying to get all the good talent back out. But then at the end, and I hope we're going to talk about the falling flat on its face reference to "It's a Trap," which was just terrible. I wish they hadn't actually made that joke. It was that bad. But then with the Mind Flayer, like wiping his brain, like what was that about? If are you trying to kill him? You're trying to wipe his mind?
I've just had a thought now. I mean, I thought if the whole point of her was to like, if she did it out of personal reasons and she hated him for some reason, why didn't she just kill him?
Push him off the train.
Push him off. To be fair, I also noted they definitely died jumping off that train. There is absolutely no chance they survived that. So they definitely died on that train. But why wouldn't you just push him off the train?
And talking about the train as well, just as a quick aside, the first thing my wife said was, "How are they going to get back?"
Well,
Like
yeah.
literally, without even thinking about carrying stuff, she was like, "How are they going to get back on the train? How are they going to get back?"
And are they assuming that when they go back? I mean, she obviously knew they weren't going to get back. But what's he thinking? Like, I barely got onto the train, but I'm going to get back through all the security checks with this huge box of medical equipment or scientific equipment. And I also thought, this is the future, right? Or, something. And we've got droids and what. Do we still have droid conductors for tickets? Is there not some sort of better technology than 2 droids?
See, I went one level further than that, because I think I don't know if it's before or after the train, but they go on about, it must have been before the train. Because she's talking about the New Republic and how everybody's working together for a better planet and all, better society and all this kind of stuff. And my first thought was, so public transport isn't free in the future. You know what I mean? Like,
it's a
such
utopian
an
society,
advanced
but as long as you pay.
civilization. You've got droids, but you don't have free trains.
And also, what a really shit statue. Did they? So apparently, the highest peak on Coruscant is the only place where you can see the planet.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any goddamn sense. And then what they did was they cut it off. I actually thought, because is Coruscant's not the one that's like Cloud City. That's like, but it is really high. I thought that was just the mountain like poking up through the bottom. And they'd sort of built this city around the top of it. No, they must have just cut the top off the mountain and brought it to the city as an ornament.
Oh, I generally thought that they had literally built a platform around the top of the mountain.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, surely, like, if it's a mountain, I mean, it's a different planet, right? So they always have different like weather conditions. But if it's the highest peak on this planet, surely it's pretty goddamn cold.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was just a weird thing that sort of took me out. Like, there was a lot of things that just made me think, what's the point of, why are we seeing this? It's like, purely they were trying to build this weird relationship between the two, like a trust between the two characters. But she just seemed sort of creepy the whole way through it, so I didn't believe it.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the betrayal. And then when it came at the end, I was like, okay, you took a long time to get to that betrayal. And I don't really see your end game here. It's
but I'm the idiot in the room. I'm going to put my hands up here and say I'm the idiot in the room, because what happened to Dr. Pershing? Like, is he dead?
Yeah, is he dead?
Like,
is her entire plot or her entire plan was to get him into the mind flayer so that she could do what? Torture him, kill him, wipe his mind?
Yeah.
And why did everyone who was doing the procedure leave?
Yeah.
All the doctors or all the people there who said, oh no, it's just a small current, you're going to be very pleasant, they all left? And then why does the machine go to that highest setting anyway?
Yeah.
Like, it just seemed like, what is going on? It just, and again, I don't know if we're going to this is going to come back. I really hope it doesn't. I kind of hope this is just it over, so we don't have to go back to this nonsense.
But then it raises a question: why? And it's stopping my enjoyment of season 3 because of the Book of Boba Fett, and I didn't realise that you needed to watch that first up until you told me. You know, I would have been so confused, because I would have been like, what? Why is he back? Like, what? Like, how is he here? Like, how is Grogu, back? But now, because of that, as I said earlier, I haven't seen all the Book of Boba Fett. I just got the Cliff Notes version. But now my problem is am I watching other TV shows now?
Well,
like, as you said earlier, is this a precursor to something else?
Or have I missed another series somewhere that explains more about these people? This is what I was saying a couple of weeks ago. Was like, they don't give you any really indication of other media that you have to consume in order to enjoy this, which I think is ridiculous. I shouldn't have to watch any other series to enjoy this one, like, to its fullest.
No.
So I was just wondering at some point, did I miss another show where these people had a bigger role? Because I didn't remember them at all, and it turns out I don't think I need to remember the Doctor, because he's clearly out of commission, either dead or mind flayed, which I thought was a reference to Stranger Things. I think that the mind flayer thing might have appeared in Andor, which is fine. That's one of the sort of references where you don't have to have watched Andor to understand like this technology, right? It's called a mind flayer. You can put two and two together. So that's an okay reference to, say, Andor, where they had made this mind flayer device. But yeah, oh no, I was just confused. The whole middle section of that episode confused me. And I'm hoping that next week we get more Mandalorian and more of just Jin doing doing badass Mandalorian stuff, and not all just Bo-Katan. I like Bo-Katan, but the show's called The Mandalorian, and the Mandalorian being Jin Djarin, not anyone else. So I want to see him back as a spotlight for a while. Him and Grogu. So
I agree. I think I definitely ain't nobody got time for that when it comes to like figuring out what episode in the universe you need to watch to maintain the story. I think for me to keep enjoying it, it really kind of needs to go back to its roots of like something like a kind of Wild West-esque episode. But I just don't know. I mean, I was going to say I don't know how they're going to shoehorn that in, but they put some weird non-Mandalorian story in.
So let's go
into the show, so obviously they can do whatever they want for the next episode to shoehorn that in. But
final thoughts and predictions. Final thoughts of the episode and predictions for upcoming stories.
Final thought of that episode would be, for me, I don't understand what they were trying to achieve. Predictions based off of that episode, I don't know. I generally, honestly don't know if that is going to be her agenda. The communications officer is going to have like a kind of agenda that's going to be part of the season 3 Mandalorian plot, or that was just a starter to a new TV show. But I'd like to think that her that's her agenda, and she's going to somehow cross paths with Mandalorian. How that's going to happen, I think, is only going to be through Bo-Katan, if I'm honest. I think in fact, actually, I've just thought potential plot for the future would be Bo-Katan getting revenge for a house being blown up.
Yeah. So I would say I agree with that. It was a mediocre episode. There were some good points that I did like, and quite a lot of bad things, or not necessarily bad, just confusing and a bit slow and at the moment seemingly pointless. It may come about as that they're very important, or that they were actually quite clever. But for this episode, honestly, when I say it's a sort of average, maybe slightly below average episode when you look at it as a whole.
I would agree.
My predictions are, I have a feeling that we've not seen the last of this communications officer. And I'm wondering if Moff Gideon isn't going to come back at some point as maybe the secret mastermind of this plot, this revenge plot against Jin. He's somehow got back into a group of what do you call them, loyalists, maybe like Empire loyalists, and he was the one who sent the attack on Bo-Katan's house, because she was also there when he got taken down, so maybe he blames her as well, and he wants to get revenge on Jin. So I have a suspicion that Moff Gideon will come back. Well, and I would love that, even if it's just to see more of what's his name, Carlo Esposito. I love that guy.
Yeah, because that's made me think that actually, Moff Gideon bringing them up has made me think all of a sudden, actually, is she a double agent that's basically trying to weed through the what do they call it again? The rehabilitation place, and then it's the
Amnesty Centre.
Amnesty Centre. Thank you. Is she actually a double agent in there, basically weeding out the ones that are still loyal to the Empire? Was she actually getting rid of him when she finally proved that he wasn't going to be working in the Empire's best interests anymore? And then,
well, I think she was. I think she was maybe even sent specifically to target him, to get rid of him. So maybe she's gone in as an assassin to, take out several very key people who could, take the Empire's secrets and science and technology over to the New Republic. So when the First Order eventually does come up and out.
And the reason she didn't instantly kill him, like push him off the train or anything like that, was she needed to be sure that he had turned.
Or so she doesn't blow her cover.
Yeah.
So she could sort of clear. So if she gets killed, so if she gets caught murdering someone, that's kind of it. But if she's just sort of turning in known traitors, then that still keeps her cover intact.
Her, would you?
No, exactly. Never suspect her. But we'll see. We'll see if it continues down this trajectory. I'm going to be disappointed with the series. I'm fairly disappointed with the series so far. Anyway, this wasn't doing anything to bring up my excitement level of it. But we shall see what happens next week.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming. And
no, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me join in. I've really enjoyed it.
You're welcome. And then we will leave it there. And until next week, I'll say bye-bye from Grogu. And bye-bye from Scott. So
catch you later, guys.
Ciao.